The Battle of Talas, a clash of empires that changed the world. Some battles seem small, but it end up echoing through history, changing the world in ways no one could have seen coming. Back in the year 751, two of the planet's superpowers, the Tang Dynasty in China and the Arab Abbasid Caliphate, were heading straight for each other. They were about to clash over the legendary Silk Road, a battle that would decide its fate. But more than that, through a complete accident of war, this fight would unleash a piece of technology that literally created the modern world. This is the story of the Battle of Talis and how it changed everything. At the start of the 8th century, giants walked the earth. In the east, China's Tang Dynasty was in its golden age. Its territory stretched from the Pacific deep into Central Asia. Its culture was famously cosmopolitan, and its economy was second to none. The Tang controlled a massive, diverse empire, and a lot of its wealth flowed along the Silk Road, the network of trade routes that acted as the world's economic artery. To control that artery was to control unimaginable riches. Meanwhile, in the West, a new power was rising. Just a year earlier, in 750, a revolution had swept the Islamic world, bringing down the Abbasid Caliphate and installing a new dynasty, the Abbasids. The Abbasid Caliphate was ambitious, full of energy, and eager to expand. From their magnificent new capital in Baghdad, they looked east and saw the exact same prize the Tang did, the wealthy cities and trade routes of Central Asia. This was a land of legendary places like Samarkand and Bukhara, a crossroads of culture, faith, and most importantly, money. Two empires, both at the height of their power, were expanding towards the very same spot on the map. A clash wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. The huge territory between the Tang and Abbasid homelands was a complicated patchwork of smaller kingdoms and nomadic tribes. For decades, both empires had played a careful game of influence, using diplomacy, money, and proxy wars to get the upper hand. The Tang had cleverly set up a string of protectorates, pushing their power west, mostly to box in their other big rival, the Tibetan Empire. The Abbasids, on the other hand, were tightening their grip on Persia and the lands around it, pushing their own frontier to the east. The flashpoint was a local squabble that spun out of control. The rulers of two neighboring city-states, Ferghana and Shash, which is now Tashkent, were in the middle of a bitter feud. The king of Ferghana felt threatened and called on his powerful protector, the Tang Dynasty. The emperor answered the call, sending one of his most aggressive generals, a man of Korean descent named Gao Shenzhai. Gao Shenzhai was a force to be reckoned with, famous for his bold campaigns across the deadly Pamir Mountains. In 750, he marched on Shash, laid siege to the city, and after promising the king he could leave safely, went back on his word, sacking the city and executing him. The slain king's son, however, got away. He fled west to the only power strong enough to challenge the Tang, the Abbasids. He pleaded his case to Abu Muslim, the powerful Abbasid governor of the region, who saw a perfect chance to put a stop to Chinese expansion. A line had been crossed. The Abbasids responded, sending their own army under another capable general, Ziyad ibn Salah. The armies of two great empires were now on the march, and the prize wasn't just justice for a local prince, it was control over the heart of Asia. The armies that met at the Talis River, on the border of modern-day Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, were the best of their time. General Gao Shenzhai led a professional Tang army. While Chinese records say he had about 30,000 men, this was a highly disciplined force. The core of his army was its heavy infantry, famous for their tough armor and powerful crossbows, a weapon that could outshoot just about any bow their enemies carried. But Gao's army wasn't just Chinese. He also had a large group of mercenaries, the Carluk Turks, a nomadic cavalry force whose loyalty would turn out to be the most important factor in the battle. Marching to meet them was the Abbasid army under Ziyad ibn Salah, though some historical details about him and his forces are not universally agreed upon. Arab sources claim they had a much larger army, but those numbers are probably inflated, as they often are in old accounts. The Abbasid army was a diverse mix of Arab and Persian soldiers from the Caliphate's heartland, backed up by local troops from the Central Asian territories they now controlled. And just like the Tang, the Abbasids had also made a deal with Turkic tribes, including, as fate would have it, the very same Carluk Turks who were riding with Gao Shenzhai. In the summer of 751, these two imperial armies finally clashed in the Talis River Valley. For days, the battle was a brutal grind. The first few clashes actually went in the Tang's favor. Gao Shenzhai's professional infantry and their crossbows gave them an edge in ranged attacks, and their disciplined volleys chewed up the Abbasid lines. Even when the Abbasid infantry charged, the heavily armored Tang soldiers held their ground. The battle settled into a bloody stalemate under the hot Central Asian sun. Both sides were taking huge losses, and neither could get the upper hand. The fate of the battle and the future of a continent was hanging on a single thread. That thread snapped on the fourth day. It wasn't a brilliant tactic or a heroic charge that decided the battle. It was a betrayal. The Carluk Turk cavalry, who had been fighting for the Tang Dynasty, suddenly switched sides. Historians still debate if this was planned from the start, or if the Carluks just saw an opportunity on the battlefield and took it. Maybe they decided their future was brighter with the rising Abbasids, or maybe they'd been cutting a secret deal with Ziyad ibn Salah the whole time. Whatever the reason, the result was catastrophic. As the main Abbasid army pushed from the front, the Carluks swung their horses around and smashed into the rear of the Tang army. Caught in a pincer, the Chinese lines shattered. Surprise became panic, and panic became a total rout. Gao Shenzhai's disciplined army, which had fought so well for days, was completely destroyed. The slaughter was incredible. Of the tens of thousands of soldiers Gao had led into the valley, only a few thousand, including the general himself, managed to escape the carnage and start the long, desperate retreat home. The Abbasids had won a crushing victory. The battle was over. The westward expansion of the Tang Dynasty was stopped dead in its tracks. The Abbasid Caliphate was now the undisputed master of Central Asia. The immediate results of the Battle of Talas were obvious. The Tang Dynasty's power in Central Asia vanished. With their ambitions crushed, they were soon forced to deal with problems at home. Just a few years later, in 755, the Catastrophic and Lushan rebellion broke out. A civil war so devastating it would fatally weaken the dynasty and force it to pull its troops from its western borders for good. The Abbasids, on the other hand, had secured their eastern flank and cemented Islam as the main religion and culture in the region for centuries to come. But the most important consequence of the battle was something no one saw coming. It wasn't about land or religion, it was about technology. The traditional story goes that among the thousands of Chinese prisoners taken by the Abbasids were skilled craftsmen who knew one of China's most protected secrets: how to make paper. For centuries, China had a monopoly on this game-changing invention. While everyone else was writing on heavy, expensive stuff like parchment or papyrus, the Chinese had cheap, lightweight paper. Now, thanks to the fortunes of war, that secret was about to get out. The captured paper makers were put to work, and soon the first paper mill outside of China was built in Samarkand. While some historians have believed the spread of this technology may have been more gradual, the battle undoubtedly sped things up. From there, the technology spread like wildfire across the Islamic world. Paper mills popped up in Baghdad, Damascus, and Cairo. Arab scholars even improved the process, and having cheap paper to write on fueled a golden age of science, math, and literature across the Abbasid Caliphate. From the Islamic world, papermaking slowly trickled into Europe. Its arrival was a game changer. It made books cheaper, governments more efficient, and knowledge far easier to spread. And when Gutenberg invented his printing press in the 15th century, it was the wide availability of paper that made the mass production of books possible, lighting the fuse for the Renaissance, the Reformation, and the scientific revolution. The Battle of Talis was a pivotal clash that redrew the map of Central Asia and stopped one of the world's greatest empires in its tracks. But its real impact wasn't about the clash of swords and spears. It was about the quiet, accidental transfer of an idea. The defeat of a Chinese army led to their most important technology spreading west, first empowering their rivals, and then eventually laying the groundwork for the modern world of mass information we live in today. It just goes to show that the biggest consequences of a battle are often the ones nobody was fighting for. If you enjoyed this story about a forgotten but crucial moment in history, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about the events and ideas that shaped our world. Let us know in the comments what other historical turning points you'd like us to cover next. Thanks for watching.